The city of Seattle has always worn the rain like an old coat worn thin at the elbows, but impossible to leave behind. Some people say the rain here gets in your bones. For me, it got into my story every rough edge, every mistake, every hope that managed to grow in the cracks between the gray days. My name is Lucas Avery. I'm 37 now, a senior policy advisor for a clean energy startup in downtown Seattle, living in an apartment where I can watch the ferries cross Elliott Bay, the skyline sometimes disappearing into a wash of mist. But the story that matters, the one I carry inside, begins on the wet streets of Rainier Valley, in a neighborhood where the bus rattled the windows and the pavement was always slick, even in July. I was the firstborn in a house that never seemed big enough for all the noise. Dad, Gerald, worked long days at Hargrove's Auto, crawling under trucks, cursing at stripped bolts, coming home with grease still in the lines of his hands. Mom, Ruth, split her time between the checkout lanes at Miller's Market and folding laundry that never seemed to shrink. We didn't have much hand-me-down shoes, a living room couch patched with duct tape, a television that flickered through the static, but Mom made pot roast stretch, and Dad made sure we always had heat, even if it meant picking up side jobs until midnight. Then there was Ellie, 7 years younger than me. From the start, she felt like sunlight in a house that mostly knew drizzle. Ellie was the kid teachers called gifted, in parent conferences shy, but bright as a penny, with a knack for turning the margins of her homework into blooming wildflowers and dragons with kind eyes. She was small for her age, with hair the color of wheat, and eyes so dark they looked violet in certain light. When she smiled, even tough old Dad softened. But being the older brother wasn't as simple as it sounded. My earliest memories are of trying to fight the world, and feeling like I was always losing. By age 10, I knew all the shortcuts behind the corner stores, all the best hiding places for skipping school. I made friends with kids who smelled like cigarettes and cheap cologne, who laughed too loud and never went home before dark. I learned that fists were louder than words, that you could earn respect or something like it by standing your ground even when your knees were shaking. Most nights, Mom waited up. Sometimes, when I slipped through the door after curfew, she was asleep on the sofa, television muttering weather reports to no one. Dad's lectures were short. "Lucas, you want to end up like those punks? Keep it up." But there was always disappointment in his voice, the kind that lingers. I think it hurt more than the threats. Ellie, though, she was never angry. She'd hide my cigarettes, tape hopeful little notes on my backpack. "Come to my art show, Lucas. Friday after school. I saved you a cookie." Sometimes, she'd sit on the porch steps waiting for me, her knees drawn up under her chin, sketchbook balanced on her thighs. She'd ask me to pose for her, never caring that my hair was a mess, that my knuckles were scabbed. "I'm drawing you as a knight today," she'd say, and for a minute, I'd forget about the fights and the noise, and just let her believe. But I kept messing up. The school called home more times than I can. Count fighting, skipping class, disrespect. I hated sitting still. I hated feeling like I was always on the wrong side of something too poor, too loud, too angry for the nice kids from north of Othello Street. I started to believe that was all I'd ever be. There was one night that stands out. I was 13. Dad had just come home, tired and muddy, when the phone rang. "Mr. Avery? This is Officer Tran down at the precinct. Your son's here." I'd been caught shoplifting snacks with friends, a stupid dare that went sideways. Dad didn't yell. He just drove home in silence, his hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles whitened. When we pulled into the driveway, he said, "Lucas, you're going to break your mother's heart." I couldn't sleep that night. I heard Mom crying in the kitchen. Ellie slipped into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and hugged me. "You're not bad," she whispered. "You just need to find your story." I didn't believe her, but I wanted to. My friends loved my rebellious streak. They called me Ace, said I was the toughest kid on the block. But it was all smoke and noise. Inside, I was scared of ending up nowhere, scared of letting Ellie down. The day everything changed started like any other. I was 15, Ellie, 8. I promised Mom I'd walk Ellie home from school just once, be the big brother I was supposed to be. But after last period, my friends found me. "Come on, Ace. There's a party at Tommy's place. We'll be back before dark." I caved, told myself Ellie would be fine. She always was. That afternoon, the sky opened up, pouring cold rain over everything. Ellie walked home alone, cutting across the park behind our house, a shortcut everyone used. A group of older boys from a rougher part of the neighborhood spotted her. They'd tangled with me before, and they knew exactly who she was. They called her names, mocked her for being Ace's little sister. One of them grabbed her backpack, tore up her drawings, shoved her to the ground. Ellie, always quiet, tried to get up. They pushed her again, harder this time. She fell, scraping her elbow badly on the concrete. A neighbor found her and brought her home. I wasn't there. I was 2 blocks away laughing with my friends when I got the call. I ran the whole way, rain blurring everything. Ellie sat on the couch, knees drawn up, blood drying on her arm, sketchbook in tatters. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and asked, "Why didn't you come?" I had no answer. That night, guilt gnawed at me. I lay awake, replaying her question over and over. I heard her crying in her room, clutching what was left of her art. I made a promise to myself one I never spoke aloud. I would change, not for school, not for my parents, but for Ellie. I started going to class, dropped the worst friends, stopped the fighting, learned to say no when trouble found me. It was ugly at first, told friends, turned their backs. Teachers didn't trust me. I spent months in the margins trying to prove I wasn't the kid everyone thought I was. But Ellie believed in me. She'd leave notes in my lunch bag. "Proud of you, Lucas. Draw with me tonight?" I did. And every time I wanted to quit, every time the city seemed too gray, I thought of that day, the rain, the blood on her elbow, the way she looked at me. Somehow, I made it to graduation. Not top of my class, not even close, but I walked across the stage. Ellie cheered from the bleachers, clutching a sign she'd painted herself. "Go Lucas, my hero." Mom cried. Dad clapped, gruff, but proud. That was the start of something new. I wasn't fixed overnight. The city's rain doesn't just wash your past away. But I started believing that maybe, just maybe, I could become the brother Ellie always saw, the one who would stand in the storm with her, no matter what. When you're a teenager, you think change happens overnight. One good decision and the world will finally let you start over. That's not how it worked for me. The years after graduation were slow, uneven, and full of doubt. I wasn't a bad kid anymore. But I wasn't sure I could be anything else either. Seattle's rain never quite let up. Sometimes it was a drizzle, sometimes a downpour, but it was always there, reminding me of what I used to be. After high school, I enrolled at the University of Washington, a place that always seemed too clean, too bright for someone with my history. On my first day, I wore a borrowed shirt and shoes that still had holes in the soles. I sat in the back of lecture halls, certain the world could see right through me. But I was determined not to slip back into the life I'd left behind. Determined to be someone my sister could be proud of. Ellie, by then, was blossoming in her own way. She'd entered high school, still carrying that battered sketchbook everywhere she went. Her teachers called her a prodigy. She won local art contests, her watercolors of rainy city streets capturing something fragile and hopeful, even on the grayest days. I cheered her on at every show, hung her paintings on the wall of my cramped dorm room. We'd meet every Sunday at the same corner cafe, sometimes just for coffee and quiet, sometimes for long talks about dreams. "I want to have my own studio one day, Lucas," she'd say. "I want to make art that makes people feel less alone." Those Sundays kept me anchored. My parents still worked long hours, and sometimes I worried that the distance between us, physical, emotional, the distance created by all those years I spent as a disappointment, would never quite close. But with Ellie, there was always a bridge. We laughed about old times, made fun of my cooking, teased each other about the rain. University wasn't easy for me. The discipline I'd forced on myself to graduate high school barely got me through freshman year. Math classes felt like torture. Writing papers kept me up until dawn. But for every failure, I found a way to fight back. I joined study groups, worked a part-time job cleaning offices, took extra credits just to prove I could. My professors noticed. One, Dr. Patel, took an interest, inviting me to help on a research project about renewable energy in urban neighborhoods. "You see things differently, Lucas," she said. "You know what's at stake." That job became my first real step into the world of environmental policy. The more I learned, the more I wanted to help fix the city I'd once seen, only as a place to run wild. I worked hard, saved every dollar, and sent what I could home. Ellie started talking about art school on the West Coast. My parents were skeptical. "Artists don't pay the bills." Dad grumbled, but I backed her, no hesitation. It was around this time that Maya came into our lives. She was a nursing student then, working part-time at the hospital where Ellie volunteered for a summer art program. Maya was different from anyone I'd ever met, quick to laugh, sharp-witted, with a calm that could quiet any storm. She and Ellie became fast friends. It was Ellie who set us up, inviting both of us to a midnight movie marathon. then mysteriously disappearing after the first film. Maya and I ended up talking for hours about everything, and nothing her dreams of working in public health, my stumbles through college, the way Seattle looked in the rain. Falling for Maya was both effortless and terrifying. She challenged me, saw through my walls, made me believe I could build something new. She never flinched when I told her about my past. Instead, she told me about her own struggles, the pressures of being the first in her family to go to college, the way she sometimes felt invisible in a city that moved too fast. Ellie watched our story unfold with a quiet joy. She painted us together, left notes in my apartment. Tell Maya you like her. She already knows. For the first time, our little family felt whole. As the years passed, things began to change. I graduated from UW, landed a job at a clean energy startup, small pay, but meaningful work. Maya became a full-time nurse at Harborview, pouring her heart into every shift. Ellie was accepted into an arts program downtown, renting a tiny studio apartment filled with canvases and plants. Still, I couldn't escape my old shadows. There were nights when the past crept in, memories of fights in alleys, the echo of my dad's disappointed sigh. Sometimes, when Ellie called late, her voice small and tired, I worried she was in trouble. I worried I wasn't doing enough. But for a while, life was gentle. We had family dinners, Mom's pot roast, Dad's cautious pride, Maya's stories from the ER. We celebrated Ellie's first solo gallery show, drank cheap wine from plastic cups, took pictures under neon streetlights. I even started saving for a ring, imagining a future with Maya, a house where rain meant comfort, not trouble. Then Dylan Reed entered the picture. He was everything our parents dreamed of for Ellie: charming, ambitious, owner of a boutique tech firm in Capitol Hill. He brought flowers to our family dinners, remembered everyone's birthdays, drove a silver Tesla, and wore tailored suits. To Mom and Dad, he was a sign that Ellie had finally made it. I wanted to be happy for her, but something in his polished smile made me uneasy. It started small. Ellie stopped coming to Sunday coffees. She canceled plans, said she was busy with Dylan's work parties or his weekend getaways to Vancouver. Her paintings changed, too less color, more gray. She didn't laugh as easily. When she did come by, she wore clothes that didn't suit her blazers instead of paint-stained sweaters, neutral colors instead of her wild patterns. Maya noticed too, asking me, "Do you think Ellie's happy?" I tried to brush off my worries. Maybe Dylan was just different from us. Maybe he was helping Ellie grow up. But the more I watched, the more the old feeling returned, the feeling I'd failed to protect her once and was about to do it again. Then, one Sunday, Ellie arrived late at my apartment, her eyes red. She sat at the kitchen table, twisting her hands together. "Lucas," she said, "do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" I sat beside her, unsure what to say. She stared out at the rain. "Dylan wants me to move in with him. He says it'll be better for my career. But I don't know. I feel like I'm fading." I wanted to tell her to run, but I remembered all the times I'd pushed too hard and watched people pull away. Instead, I just listened, holding her hand until she stopped shaking. Life, I realized, wasn't just about fighting battles. Sometimes, it was about waiting in the storm, hoping the ones you love would find their way back, and being ready to stand with them when they did. I promised myself, as the city lights blurred behind the rain on my window, that no matter what happened next, I would not let the past repeat itself. Not for Ellie, not for Maya, not for the person I was still trying to become. The first sign was so small I almost missed it, a forgotten laugh. A sudden apology in the middle of a joke, the way Ellie shrank when Dylan placed a hand on her shoulder. If you weren't looking for it, you might have thought nothing had changed. But for someone who'd spent a lifetime learning the difference between real smiles and forced ones, I saw the cracks growing before anyone else did. Maya saw it too. After every family dinner, as we stacked plates and washed the grease from our hands, she'd catch my eye across the kitchen and give the slightest shake of her head. At first, neither of us could put words to it. Dylan was polite, attentive, the kind of man who made everyone else in the room feel smaller without ever raising his voice. He knew all the right answers, the best wines to pair with dinner, how to win over even the most stubborn of our parents' friends. But he watched Ellie, really watched her. His eyes followed her every movement, not with love, but with a silent calculation, as if she were a puzzle he needed to solve, or worse, a possession he needed to protect from the world. The change in Ellie was subtle at first. She stopped painting cityscapes in wild colors, started showing me abstract pieces in shades of blue and gray. "It's just a phase," she said, but her hands trembled as she explained the inspiration. She stopped coming to Maya's birthday brunches, always offering excuses Dylan was working late, or she had a last-minute gallery meeting. On the rare nights she did show up, she sat close to Dylan, rarely speaking, picking at her food and glancing at her phone every few minutes. One night, after a family dinner, I caught her alone in the backyard, shivering under the porch light. "You okay, Elle?" I asked. She jumped a little, startled. "Yeah, just tired. Dylan's been busy lately." I wanted to press, but she hugged herself and turned away. "I'm fine, Lucas. Really." The more she retreated, the more I worried. My parents, meanwhile, were enamored with Dylan. "He's good for her," Mom told me one evening as we scrubbed dishes together. "Ambitious. He'll take care of her. Maybe you could learn a thing or two from him, Lucas." Dad grunted his agreement. "A man like Dylan brings stability. Ellie's finally settling down." I nearly laughed. Did they not see what I saw, or did they just not want to? Maya, thankfully, was on my side. "She's not herself," Maya whispered to me one night as we walked along Pike Place, rain slicking the sidewalks gold under neon lights. "I know what it looks like when someone's being slowly erased. I've seen it before at work." "You think he's hurting her?" I asked, voice tight. "Maybe not in the ways you expect, but control comes in many forms. Isolation, criticism, making her doubt herself. It doesn't always leave bruises." Her words landed hard. I remembered all the times I'd let myself believe that if you couldn't see pain, it wasn't real. The final straw, at least for me, was the night I saw Ellie's old sketchbooks in the trash. I'd stopped by her apartment to drop off some coffee beans she liked. Dylan answered the door, wearing a crisp shirt, his smile sharp as glass. "Ellie's out running errands," he said. "I'll let her know you stopped by." But as I left, I spotted a pile of Ellie's Things Her Childhood sketchbooks, a stack of paint-splattered jeans, a note in her handwriting, "I just need to be better." The sight of it made my blood run cold. I wanted to storm back up the stairs, drag her away, make her see what was happening. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I called Maya and poured it all out. "She's throwing away the best parts of herself, Maya. For him." Maya listened quietly, then said, "We can't force her, but we can remind her who she is. And we can watch for signs. If it gets worse, we don't wait." Not long after, Ellie called to say Dylan had proposed. There would be an engagement party at his family's lake house, just close friends and family. "I want you there, Lucas. Please," she said, her voice unsteady. I agreed, though the thought of celebrating made me sick. The party was perfect on the surface fairy lights strung across the dock, canapes passed on silver trays, Dylan's parents making toasts about new beginnings. Ellie wore a dress that didn't look like hers, smiled for photos, and barely met my eyes all evening. I found her on the porch after dinner, staring at the lake, her arms wrapped tight around her middle. "You happy?" I asked gently. She nodded, but her lips trembled. "Everyone says I should be." I put my hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do anything you don't want, Elle." She pulled away, shaking her head. "I'm fine, Lucas. Please, just be happy for me." I watched her walk back inside, the distance between us widening with every step. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain beat the window, haunted by old fears. I'd failed Ellie once before. I promised myself I wouldn't do it again. But as I closed my eyes, I realized that sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to wait and when to break the glass. Weddings, in the stories people tell, are supposed to be the happiest days of your life. Maybe that's true for most. But for me, our wedding became the day I learned what it means to stand up for family, no matter what it costs. Seattle had been merciful that morning the rain held off, sunlight cutting through the clouds in watery gold, and the lakeside garden we'd chosen for our ceremony felt almost enchanted. Maya looked radiant, her hair swept up with wildflowers, her smile easy and unguarded as she greeted each guest. My parents for once seemed relaxed, laughing as they posed for photos with relatives from out of town. Ellie arrived with Dylan, her arm looped through his, wearing a soft blue dress that suited her despite its unfamiliar style. She looked thinner than ever, her eyes shadowed, but she managed a genuine smile when she hugged Maya and me. "I wouldn't miss this for the world," she whispered, squeezing my hand. For a moment, it was like the years melted away, and we were just two siblings, hiding from the world under an old umbrella, safe from any storm. The ceremony went by in a blur vows spoken under the archway, Maya's parents wiping tears, applause echoing across the lake. During our first dance, I caught Ellie watching us, her lips trembling with an unspoken emotion. Dylan was never far from her side, his hand resting possessively on her back, his laughter just a little too loud. As the sun set, lanterns flickered to life around the garden, and guests drifted between the dance floor and the buffet tables. Maya and I slipped away for a moment of quiet by the water's edge. "You did it," she teased, bumping her shoulder against mine. "You survived your own wedding." I grinned. But even then, my eyes searched the crowd for Ellie. I found her at the dessert table, chatting with Jordan Kim, an old friend from her art school days. For the first time all evening, I saw a flicker of the old Elithe one who laughed with her whole face, who forgot to be careful. Dylan appeared, silent as a shadow. He slid his arm around her, leaning in close. His smile never reached his eyes. From across the garden, I saw the shift in his posture, the tightening of his grip on Ellie's wrist. She flinched, nearly dropping her plate. I started moving toward them, my heart pounding. Before I could reach her, Dylan's voice cut through the music, low and icy. "I told you not to talk to other men," he hissed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Jordan stepped back, hands raised. "Sorry, man, just catching up." But Dylan was beyond listening. He jerked Ellie's arm hard enough to make her cry out. Her plate crashed to the ground. Conversations stopped. All eyes turned to them. Maya was the first to act. She set down her glass and crossed the lawn, her nurse's calm masking her anger. "That's enough, Dylan," she said, her voice steady. "Let her go." Dylan straightened, scanning the silent crowd, and suddenly he smelled a cold, brittle thing. "This is between me and my fiancé," he said. "Stay out of it." By then I was there, adrenaline surging, every instinct from my old life roaring to the surface. I stepped between them, blocking Dylan from Ellie. "Let her go," I said, my voice dangerously soft. For a split second, Dylan hesitated. Then he shoved Ellie aside, turned on me and spat. "You think you can tell me what to do with my own family?" Before I could answer, he swung an open-handed slap meant for me that caught Ellie instead as she tried to step between us. She staggered, blood blooming from her nose, her blue dress stained crimson. The garden erupted. Maya caught Ellie as she fell, cradling her head. Guests gasped, some moving closer, others backing away. My mother screamed. Dad rushed forward, his face twisted in shock. Dylan glared at me, chest heaving. "She disrespected me," he shouted, voice breaking. "She needed to learn." That was it, the last straw. Years of regret, all the moments I failed to protect Ellie, crashed through me like a tidal wave. I lunged, my fist connecting with Dylan's jaw in a sickening crack. He went down hard, sprawling in the grass, stunned and bleeding. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then, everything moved at once. Maya shouting for someone to call 911, my father dragging me back, security rushing in, guests murmuring in disbelief. Dylan staggered to his feet, blood on his shirt, wild hatred in his eyes. "You'll pay for this, Lucas," he snarled. "You're done." Police arrived within minutes. Ellie, shaken and pale, was bundled into Maya's jacket and led to the ambulance. I tried to follow, but a pair of officers stopped me. A woman with gray at her temples asked me to step aside and tell her what happened. I stood in the glow of the lanterns, the wedding I dreamed of now nothing but a shattered memory. My mother wept quietly. My father refused to meet my eyes. Maya returned from the ambulance, her dress streaked with Ellie's blood, her arms shaking as she pulled me into a hug. "You did what you had to do," she whispered. And for the first time that night, I let myself cry not for the wedding lost, but for the years I'd spent waiting to stand up for my sister. I only hoped it wasn't too late. The next hours blurred together questions, statements, the ache of a punch thrown, and the deeper ache of betrayal. Dylan was taken to the hospital. Ellie kept overnight for observation. I spent the rest of the night in a police station, Maya by my side, my future hanging in the balance. But even in that fluorescent-lit room, with everything I'd built now uncertain, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Family is worth any storm. The morning after the wedding felt like waking from a fever dream. The sunlight streaming through our apartment window was too harsh, too real a reminder that nothing would be the same. The night before played on repeat in my mind. Ellie's blood on Maya's jacket, the stunned silence of our guests, my fist slamming into Dylan's jaw. I'd always thought the past was something you could outrun. I was wrong. The calls started before breakfast. My mother's voice was thin, trembling. "Lucas, what happened? Everyone's talking. The neighbors, your aunts, everyone on Facebook saw something." I tried to explain, but she was too distraught to listen, her words tangled between shame and confusion. My father was more blunt. "You made a scene. You ruined your sister's life and your own. This is all over the neighborhood. What will people think of our family?" I hung up, unable to stomach another lecture about appearances when Ellie was the one who needed us. Ellie stayed with us that first night, too shaken to return home. She sat curled on the sofa, knees hugged to her chest, wearing an old sweatshirt Maya had lent her. Her face was swollen, nose taped, a purple bruise darkening her cheek. She didn't speak for hours. When she finally did, her voice was barely audible. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I didn't mean to ruin your wedding. I couldn't stop him." Hearing her say that nearly broke me. Maya knelt beside her, taking her hands. "You did nothing wrong, Ellie. None of this is your fault." But Ellie's shoulders shook as she cried, and I saw the years of control Dylan had exerted, every rule, every criticism, every small act of isolation written across her face. The news traveled fast. Someone had filmed the entire incident. Dylan's outburst, my punch, Ellie's fall. The video hit social media by midday, racking up thousands of views. Comments poured in. Some called me a hero. Others said violence had no place at a wedding. But the vast majority saw what I did. A woman in danger. A man who finally snapped to protect her. Even so, the pressure was relentless. Dylan's family hired lawyers, threatening to press charges for assault and defamation. Our company's HR called me in for an emergency meeting, worried about optics. Neighbors whispered when Maya and I walked to the corner store, some offering quiet support, others shaking their heads in disapproval. But the worst part was Ellie's silence. She drifted through our apartment like a shadow, lost in her own mind. She refused to eat, spent hours staring out the window at the rain, barely responding to Maya's gentle encouragements. At night, I'd hear her crying, muffling the sound with her pillow. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix everything, undo the past, erase Dylan's hold on her, give her back the years he'd taken, but I couldn't. All I could do was be there, steady and unyielding, while Maya did her best to coax Ellie back to herself. After a few days, Maya pulled me aside in the kitchen. "She needs more help than we can give her. I have a friend, Sophia. She's a trauma counselor at the hospital. Let me call her." I nodded, grateful for Maya's calm. Sophia came that afternoon, her presence gentle but unwavering. She spoke to Ellie in a soft voice, never pushing, simply offering space to be heard. For the first time, I saw Ellie nod, tears streaming silently as she let herself be comforted. Meanwhile, I knew I couldn't ignore Dylan's threats. I called Jordan Kim, my old friend the private investigator. "I need everything you can find on Dylan Reed," I told him. "Anything that can help us in court. Anything that can protect my sister." Jordan didn't disappoint. Within a week, he found a pattern. An old girlfriend with a restraining order, complaints from former employees at Dylan's company, questionable financial dealings swept under the rug. He gathered statements, emails, screenshots, and even a recorded phone call with one of Dylan's ex-colleagues who confirmed his temper behind closed doors. With Maya's encouragement, I handed the evidence to our lawyer. The legal process was brutal. Dylan's lawyers tried to turn everything around, painting me as violent, Ellie as unstable, even trying to undermine Maya's credibility. There were days when I thought I'd break, when the world felt stacked against us. But every time I saw Ellie's bruised face, every time Maya squeezed my hand, I found the resolve to keep going. The trial date was set. In the weeks leading up, our apartment became a war room, Jordan poring over documents, Maya practicing testimony, Sophia helping Ellie find her voice again. My parents, at first cold and distant, began to come around as the truth came out. My mother called late one night, voice shaky. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I should have listened. I just wanted things to be normal, but I see now, normal was never safe for her." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Slowly, Ellie began to return. She painted again, small things at first, the corner of a window, the way sunlight looked on Maya's teacup. She laughed at one of my old jokes, and it felt like a miracle. On the morning of the trial, she wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her chin lifted with newfound strength. "I'm ready," she said. "He doesn't get to decide who I am anymore." In court, Dylan tried to keep up his facade. He wore a sharp suit, made apologies that sounded hollow. But the evidence was clear, and when Ellie took the stand, her voice, though trembling, was steady. She spoke of fear, of lost years, of the power it took to ask for help. The verdict, when it came, was both a relief and a new beginning. Dylan was sentenced, not just for the assault, but for a host of charges Jordan had uncovered. He left the courtroom in handcuffs, his eyes full of hate, but powerless at last. When it was over, Maya and I stood with Ellie on the courthouse steps. The sky was clearing. a thin band of sunlight breaking through the clouds. "I don't know what comes next," Ellie whispered, "but I want to try." I hugged her, feeling for the first time since the wedding that maybe the storm had finally passed. In the weeks after the trial, our world slowly began to mend, though nothing fell back into place the way it had been before. It was as if a great storm had passed over our lives, uprooting everything we thought was permanent, and when the sky cleared, we found ourselves changed older, maybe wiser, definitely more scarred, but stronger too. Ellie stayed with us for a while, her nights restless at first, haunted by old dreams. Sometimes I'd find her curled on the living room sofa, sketching by the light of the street lamp, her drawings now full of fragile hope, wildflowers climbing over broken fences, hands reaching for sunlight, girls with fierce, uncertain eyes. Some days, she'd join Maya and me in the kitchen, learning new recipes, laughing at my failed attempts at bread. She began to paint again, this time for herself, no longer worrying about galleries or public opinion. Her art became a language she used to process the pain and the promise of everything she'd lived through. Therapy helped, but so did little acts of living. Walking through Pike Place Market, watching the ferries on Puget Sound, sitting for hours in coffee shops surrounded by the music of other people's lives. Gradually, she found her rhythm, sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but always moving. My parents changed too. For a while, shame kept them away. But as Ellie's courage became public through her testimony, through the newspaper stories, even through her art, their walls began to break. My mother would call every week, her voice softer, her questions less about reputation and more about healing. Dad visited one Sunday, standing awkwardly in the doorway, a bouquet of wild daisies in his oil-stained hands. He hugged Ellie, for the first time in years, and whispered, "I'm proud of you, kid. I should have said it sooner." Life with Maya deepened through all this. Our little apartment became more than a refuge. It was a home built with patience, laughter, and long, honest conversations over late-night tea. We both agreed to postpone any big celebration. But as spring came, we gathered a few close friends and family in the backyard, exchanging vows beneath the budding maple tree. Ellie officiated, her voice steady as she spoke about love that refuses to give up, about the ways family can fail and still forgive. On the day Ellie decided to move, it was raining softly, a gentle, Seattle kind of rain, the kind that makes the world feel cleaner. She stood in our kitchen with her packed bags, passport, and acceptance letter to an art therapy program in California tucked in her backpack. "I think I'm ready to help other people who feel lost," she told us. "I don't want anyone to believe they're alone, the way I once did." I hugged her tight, 1,000 unspoken words in that embrace. Maya cried, promising to visit often, already planning summer trips down the coast. The day after Ellie left, our apartment felt emptier, but lighter too. Maya and I sat by the window, the city blurred with rain, and talked about the future, maybe buying a house, maybe having kids, maybe just growing older together in this city where storms always pass. Months went by. Ellie sent photos from her new life. Her first classroom, murals painted with children, late-night study sessions in tiny cafes. Each message sounded brighter, more certain. "I'm still scared sometimes," she admitted, "but I know no healing isn't a finish line. It's just living, choosing to keep going." Our parents began to heal in their own way too. Holidays felt warmer, the old silences replaced by stories, apologies, and laughter that sounded real. One Sunday, my father and I stood together under the old maple tree, looking out over the city. "You did the right thing, Lucas," he said quietly. "You fought for her when I didn't know how." It was enough. Sometimes I look at the painting Ellie gave us before she left, a portrait of 3 figures, hand in hand, standing in a field of wildflowers beneath a sky painted with soft, defiant light. In the corner, she wrote, "Family means never giving up, even when it's hard." If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Standing up for someone you love isn't about heroics or dramatic gestures. It's about showing up, again and again, even when you're tired, even when you're scared, even when it's easier to stay silent. It's about letting the people you care for find their own way and being there, steady and unyielding, when they reach for your hand. The world will never be free of storms, but together, we learned how to find shelter, how to rebuild, how to forgive. And in that quiet rebirth, in the space after everything has fallen apart, we found something stronger than the past. We found family.